Chapter 21. Tom seemed to be sleeping the sleep of the dead, but his breathing was even and deep, healing. Her wonder had lasted for hours. Pleasurable thoughts of life with Tom swirled around her as the night drew itself out of its darkest hours and into the first lightning of morning, and still he slept until she heard people moving around, and then the sound of crockery and cutlery as the kitchen downstairs began to be busy. And still Tom slept. His body needed it, and she smiled, remembering how that body had felt some hours before. As if he could hear her thoughts of their love-making, he finally stirred. "How are you feeling?" she whispered, getting out of the bed to make room for him. She quickly dressed. "Are you leaving?" he asked, sounding wounded. "I'm sorry that I ignored you since, well, you know." She laughed. "You didn't, Tom. You did more for my emotions while silent and sleeping than anyone has since my mother passed away. I do have to leave, though. I shall pretend I simply sat and watched you all night. Tell me, how are you feeling?" "Better. I haven't slept that well in years," he smiled. "Pain's coming back now, though." "Right, I'm going to organise for some soap, bread and cheese to be brought up, and also some rich ale. My father drinks a little too much of it, but I happen to know that beer has healing qualities, plus it gets lots of liquids into you. I'll organise a chamber, a pot of it." "No, don't do that, Fleur. I'm no Amberlet. I'll get to the bathroom, all right." "Sure." "Yes, in the bush. We get moving as soon as we can after any injury." "Well, I need to go home and check if there have been any deaths." At his surprised look, she explained, "I mean, any called in by grieving clients who need our service." "Ah, right. I'll come back later." "No, Flo, you just go do what you have to do. I'm going to be fine. I don't need mothering. I promise. I'll probably need a couple of days." She nodded. "All right. I'll leave any messages with the publican, and you can have him ring me if you need anything at all. Don't be bashful about asking for help," she said, holding up her left hand. "We belong to each other now." He grinned. "Kiss me and go, or I'll find a way to make you stay." She checked her clothes were all straight and buttoned correctly, using the small mirror on the chest of drawers, then bent down and kissed him gently. "Those wounds on your lips need to heal, or they'll never get well." "Keep kissing them better," he suggested, winning a smile. She blew him a kiss instead. "Tom, beyond loving you, I want you to know how much I completely adore you, now and forever," he said. Fleur left the room with a heart fuller than she could ever have dreamed. She was almost dizzy with happiness, and gave the publican a broad, bright smile. "You look well for sitting in a chair all night, Miss Appleby." She enjoyed a guilt-ridden private smile as she lifted her bag. "I had a good book to keep me company while our patient slept," she fibbed, permitting herself the white lie for the greater good. "He's only just woken and seemed brighter, but I think a good sleep has tricked him into feeling stronger than he actually is. I'll keep an eye on him." "You will. You're very kind here. I'll leave some money for food. It would be wonderful if you could send up some soup, bread, cheese, that sort of thing, and perhaps a bottle of healing ale tonight." She even winked to surprise herself how lovely the world felt right now. "And here's our number at Appleby's. Will you ring me if he worsens or need anything?" "No worries," and I said. "It's Thursday payday, so you can imagine how busy it will be later on. My wife will organise some food. I'll send some of the kids up to check on him." "Does he need a doctor?" "No, no, nothing like that. Just rest now while his body does what he knows he has to do. That's what the nurse at the hospital told me anyway. I'll be back soon enough." "Righto, Miss Appleby." She smiled and felt almost childish desire to skip out of the pub and all the way down to the port road home. She didn't, but she was humming the tune that she and Tom had danced to at the Palais. The melody would hold special meaning for her from now on. The distracted, vaguely smug smile held until she caught sight of the familiar black saloon car at the local doctor outside Appleby's. Her expression dropped suddenly. She stopped moving, and there was a sensation of her organs, skeletons, flesh, mind, all of her instantly deflating, as though it no longer had the equipment that held it straight and alert. She encountered that car so many times in her professional dealings. The doctor was a lovely man, desperately overworked, paid nominally, and sometimes too quick to ascribe a death based on everything he knew about his patients, rather than probing more rigorously. He was responsible for so many, not just day-to-day health needs in the community, but the more serious patients in the hospital too. It was too much for one man, she understood, and his presence at home might be a simple cow score, but was more often connected with dying. An irrational and cruel thought ghosted that she hoped it was Irma toppling down the stairs, fallen in the garden, or suffering an unexpected episode that had stopped her breathing. Fleur merely chastised herself for allowing such heartlessness into her mind. She had not been raised that way, and May would be ashamed. But Fleur, despite her guilt, knew that this was the inherent defense system that everyone possessed. It was triggered to protect her from what her mind already knew and didn't want to face the death of her father, and she knew as she began to run that he was already gone. She burst into the house looking around and she could see only Nan peering out from the kitchen with water eyes. Fleur didn't want to ask. She couldn't hear from her cook. Instead, she ran upstairs to find Irma, thanking the doctor. I am indeed deeply sorry for your loss, he said. As Fleur arrived into the land with a wild-eyed estate, Henry Appleby was of those 1 in a million men, he added, covering Irma's fat hands with large, bony eyes. No, Fleur uttered and covered her mouth with both hands to stop a shriek. Oh, Fleur, my angel, my darling, I'm so sorry. Irma rushed to her side, a study in indulgent sympathy. Fleur felt those sausage fingers clutch at the top of her arms as the doctor eyed her uncomfortably, dipping his gaze in respect. Good morning, Fleur. I'm so sorry. Dad's dead? She still said it, hoping she could somehow will it not to be true. Her lips felt numb. She couldn't bear for Irma to touch her, and she shook off her hold. The doctor clearly said, yes, Fleur, I'm very sorry to tell you that your father succumbed to what was probably a raft of underlying complaints connected to cirrhosis of the liver. No, that's not right. Oh, Fleur. Irma reached tenderly towards her. She batted away Irma's arm, encasing her bulging me in the tight sleeve of her dress. Don't touch me, she snarled. Oh, my dear, I know you're... Fleur ignored her, pushed past them both to confront her father lying in his bed. The sheet pulled up neatly to his shoulders. He looked grey. Absently, she estimated he had died around 3 hours earlier. A helpless glance at her watch told her it was nearing 9, so before 6 perhaps. As the birds had become noisy in their chorus, her father sighed his last breath. He went quietly, Fleur, darling, your name on his lips to the last, Irma said in a soppy voice, gripping with fake sympathy. Oh, my darling, darling husband, she wept, leaning against the door jamb. What am I going to do? Get rich? Fleur thought, relieved she hadn't uttered it. She hated this mindset of hers. Her father was lifeless, and all she could feel was hate instead of the love that she knew was desperately trying to ease past her despair, to flood her an almost drug-like defense. For the bereaved, she knew how it went. People in true grief could feel utterly numb for days, unable to feel much at all because the angst ran so deep, so wild in their minds. If they moved, it was almost like they were one of the robots she'd seen in the shops, functioning sometimes rather well, with an almost daunting brightness, staying busy until the funeral, and then the crash would arrive into melancholy, when all of the architecture of the funeral arrangements and flower family and friends began to disappear. Others fell into a group that she believed she might belong to. They didn't really hit the false spiritedness. Instead, they didn't really see anything, not engaging. The actions forced from memory rather than conscious movement. She was at an early stage of shock denial, and although she recognized it for what it was, she could do nothing to change it. The doctor arrived at her side and risked touching her shoulder. To be precise, it's my opinion that Henry actually died of poisoning. But Fleur began in a whisper. It was last night's oysters. Irma thinks they might have been off. He looked over at Fleur's stepmother, who nodded in agreement and stepped into the room towards them. Impossible. I purchased those myself from the Prince of Wales. They smelled of the sea. Besides, Irma seems fine, she said, keeping her tone neutral. Yes, obviously one that Henry ate wasn't fresh enough. That's all it can take, actually, he continued, almost conversational. The Prince of Wales boys are usually incredibly fresh. I eat them myself once a week, and before you say it, I know that they kept them alive out the back, delivered fresh from Coffin Bay. I don't understand either, but these random events never offer explanation. Dr. Parson, I chose those oysters myself. I would not have selected one that wasn't perfect. I carried them straight back to the house, not lingering anywhere in between the purchase and returning to the parlour, where Nan put them directly on ice. The ice was ordered in especially for them by Irma. I see, the doctor frowned. I can't guess at how this occurred. Fleur, just a terrible turnover and sat push an already fragile liver and kidney over that precipice, if I might describe it that way. He gave a tight smile and then let it go as soon as it arrived at his mouth. Fleur ignored him, babbling now. They were unshocked, alive and fresh as can be. I chose them. She knew she was repeating herself, perhaps hoping that if she explained the facts well enough, it might change the outcome. The doctor nodded, and Irma's face softened further in a contrived sympathy with each point Fleur made. Fleur was shaking her head in disbelief. Each was large, with a distinctive cup and ridged shell. I know oysters, Dr. Parsons. These were good. The Russian oysters in the back garden were beginning to make sense. Irma smiled behind. I'm sorry to have called you out so early, Doctor, she said, as if Fleur hadn't spoken. No, you did the right thing. What happens now? Irma asked, a tremor in her voice. Fleur couldn't help wondering if it was vain. She heard the doctor sigh. He too was ignoring the facts. Normally would organise for the body to be collected by under her, but we're already here. That is, unless you wish some other firm to. No one but me is touching my father, Fleur said with menace in her tone. Emma frowned. Is that wise, darling? What's wise, Emma, is that you stop pretending. Stop calling me darling or dear or angel or love. Just stop. And while you're at it, please stop pretending to care, because we both know something's not right here. Emma's shock was so convincing that Fleur wanted to give her a round of applause, but the situation was so overwhelming dark that she couldn't muster the strength to be bothered with Emma any longer. She didn't wait for her stepmother to act at her recovery from Fleur's cutting accusation any further. Thank you, Fleur said to the doctor. I can take it from here. Well, there is a business of death certificate which I can write up. Please don't do that. Pardon me, the doctor said, Fran, I have to. Not if the cause of death is in dispute, Fleur said, her voice hard enough to throw stones at. Fleur, he began. Listen to me, she said, forcing to meet her gaze and not be tempted to flick it towards Emma. You've known me a lot of my life, he nodded, and you know my father very well. I suspect you would credit us both with being an even temperament and not prone to histrionics, or he put a hand over her wrist. Fleur, you're in shock. She blew out a slow breath. That's true, I am, but my shock is not that my father has passed away. It's a matter of his death. America, what do you mean? You know me to be sensible and calm. Of course, what's this about, Fleur? Her stepmother come, Doctor, I really think that Fleur has... Oh, shut up, Emma. Both of them winced, but Fleur ignored their alarm. A wishful post-mortem to be performed on my father. She was impressed at how calm and reasonable she sounded. The doctor's alarms intensified. Good grief, what in heaven's name for Fleur? That will only prolong the shock. You and Irma need to get on with your grieving plan for Henry's burial. Not, I know you will have pronounced him dead from the complication of the alcohol consumption, no doubt cirrhosis, but you said yourself you think it was oysters. I believe my father was being deliberately poisoned. Deliberately? He repeated aghast. Yes, by fetid oysters, and I suspect arsenic has also played a keen role. His mouth formed an O, but no sound came out. His features slackened with horror. He blinked and finally found his voice. Arsenic, you cannot be serious. I am always serious, apparently, she said, her tone as dark and forbidding as a newly dug grave. Arsenic, he repeated, incredulous. Irma stepped back into the front. Doctor, I think Fleur needs a sedative. She's rambling because she adored her father, and like me, she can't believe he's gone. She gave another sob. Go away, Irma, Fleur said, sounding almost weary now. Run if you want to. You'll be hunted down. The police are going to be called, and I swear I shall see you in handcuffs. The doctor took a step back, looking as if he had taken a blow. I don't understand. No, I know you don't, but I suspect Irma does. Fleur had to hand it to her. The woman had an amazing ability to give a performance. Irma's stance didn't change. She even managed to look injured by the accusation. Just a heartbeat before the doctor turned his head slowly to gaze at Irma with fresh shock. Fleur saw Irma's gaze narrowed not slightly, like a trapped animal looking for an exit, and in the same moment, Fleur saw the spark of rage and loathing flash in Irma's eyes before she closed them. Apparently in mortification at Fleur's allegation, Fleur suspected her stepmother's mind was now racing into damage control, and especially how to refute the claim convincingly. How could you say such lies, Fleur? She demanded, her voice wavering again and her body now trembling to, oh, doctor, I think I'm going to need a powder or something to calm my nerves. I can't take this. You better plan another coffin, Fleur. If you're going to carry on like this, my heart won't stand it. Fleur turned to the doctor. She'll be fine, Fleur said, tossing the poor man towards the door. She all but herded him down the flag and ultimately downstairs where she stood in front of the telephone. Would you please call the police, Dr. Parsons? Fleur, this is the most dreadful situation. Are you really sure you wish to pursue this course? Your father was not, well, let's not mince our words. My father was probably an alcoholic, and I have no doubt his liver would have given up at some stage, but not yet. He was not near death. So hold that death certificate. I forbid you to write it out, no matter what Irma demands of you. But what if? Just give me the opportunity to substantiate my claim. Let the coroner make a decision. Fleur suspected she just lost an ally. Going by the pursed look of his lips, he wasn't happy, but he also wasn't going to obstruct justice. That much she could read. You know me since I was a child. You know I don't lie, and I know you to be very sure of yourself, Fleur, he said carefully, but she saw a hint of annoyance ghosts around his features. As I am very sure myself now in my accusation, she agreed, hoping that might satisfy him. The doctor shook his head and began stuttering. Fleur, this is an incredibly grave accusation. You're talking murder by the woman who has looked after you since you were a child, by the woman who has done no such thing. My father has looked after me. Irma simply tolerated me. Now she doesn't have to. I'm a truth seeker. I'm not trying to set Irma up or besmirch her reputation out of mischief. Hardly mischief, Fleur, he admonished her. This could mean her life. Think on it. Yes, it could, and I don't have to think on it any further than all the years I've suspected my stepmother of being insincere. I loved him, she didn't. We are talking about my father, your friend. You owe it to him to find the truth. He shook his head in a way that suggested he felt helpless. Right, he said, showing his palms. I'll call the police now and wait outside to speak to them. I'm very sorry for you both. There's only loss here. Fleur nodded, wrapping her arms around herself as if deeply chilled. I will deliver him myself to the city morgue for the coroner. She pointed upstairs to the room where he lay, unable to hold it in her rage any longer. Mark my words, my father was murdered, and now I must go to him. Good morning, doctor. She turned and left him standing in the hall, still in shock. Thanks for listening.